Alright, welcome to another tutorial. This will be the last tutorial that the SLs need to be able to view on hormones. The HL still has a few additional tutorials they'll need to go through to prepare for the AB exam. So we are, as the title indicates, we're going to look at hormones, how hormones work in the body, what they are, and some applications of hormones in our modern society. Okay, so first of all, let's look at what hormones are, where they come from, and what they do in our bodies. Okay, so first of all, hormones are considered more or less chemical messengers. They are part of a system called the endocrine system of our bodies. Basically, what you can consider is that our bodies produce hormones, and these hormones are released into the bloodstream, and they search out for what are known as target cells, and they bind themselves to the target cells, and the cells respond to those hormones as a message. And so basically we have cells that communicate between each other. We have tissues that communicate with hormones, and even organ systems. And this is the way the body communicates with each other. There's another way the body communicates with each other, and that's with the nervous system. But in this class, we're only going to deal with hormones as our messengers. But they are chemicals. Unlike the nervous system that uses electrical impulses, the hormones are chemical messengers that causes different cells to respond and act according to the messages that they receive. Alright, some different hormones that exist out there are proteins, which we've discussed, steroids, which we discussed in the lipid section. Some of them are modified amino acids or even modified fatty acids. And so you need to be aware of the different types of hormones that exist out there. Well, hormones, they're produced in what we call the endocrine glands. And again, as I mentioned, they're secreted directly into the bloodstream. And there they go and search out for their target cells. Not all hormones can bind to every cell. So every cell is specific for a particular hormone. So it can only directly communicate with that hormone and other cells in the body. Now, kind of what it looks like is if you had a cell, and on the outside of those cells is a receptor molecule that has a specific shape. And usually receptor molecules are proteins themselves that have a specific three-dimensional shape, as we've mentioned before. And if we have a hormone, such as something like this, say that this is our an example of our hormone, which has a specific shape to it, that hormone is going to go through the bloodstream, and then it's going to run into different cells. And if the shape of the hormone matches the shape of our receptor, it will fit right into that protein receptor and cause the cell to begin to change and do what it's supposed to do, communicate with it. Okay, so that's just kind of an example of how certain hormones work. Other hormones directly go into cells and causes changes within the cell as it communicates with it. Alright, so the diagram below that you see here, or off to the right, is some of the endocrine glands that are part of the endocrine system. So you can be kind of familiar with some of these. We have the pituitary gland, or sorry, this is the pituitary gland, but you have the pineal gland, the thyroid gland, which we'll talk about, the thymus, the pancreas, the ovaries, the testes, the adrenal glands. Those are all important hormone production glands that produce different hormones that the body needs to communicate. Now, with the ovaries and the testes, these contain the sex hormones. That we're going to talk about a little bit later in this tutorial. Alright, so on this screen is a list of the different sex hormones that our body produces, and these sex hormones are mainly produced, well, they're really produced for females in the ovaries, and for males they're going to be produced in the testes. Okay, now IB is going to expect that you know the differences of these hormones, be able to identify the functional groups that make them different on the IB exam. Now, these hormones are listed in your data packet, I believe on table 21. So you won't have to worry about memorizing the structures of these sex hormones, but you'll still be able to have to identify the differences of these. Okay, so let's kind of begin here looking at these. Okay, now all of the sex hormones are derived from cholesterol, and up here, the one up here on the top, oops. Okay, this is cholesterol up here, which of course we've talked about cholesterol in the lipid section of our biochemistry unit. And cholesterol is a very important molecule that we have to take in our bodies to help us to create some of these steroids, especially these sex steroids. So without cholesterol, we cannot actually produce these in the sex glands. So what we need to look at with these other three molecules here is identify their characters. For instance, the one that you see over here is estrogen, which is a female sex hormone, and the big characteristic of estrogen is it has an alcohol group and it has a benzene ring right here. That's the benzene ring. And it also has another alcohol group right here, which gives estrogen its identifying characteristics. Below estrogen is testosterone. Okay, testosterone. Testosterone is different from estrogen in the fact that it has a ketone here, and it has no benzene ring. Alright, and of course testosterone is the male sex hormone that's produced in the male testes. And then the other last structure here is more or less progesterone. Okay, and progesterone, of course, is the second female sex hormone. It's also developed in the ovaries. And you'll see that progesterone and testosterone are very similar to each other. The difference is that progesterone has this ketone group and testosterone only has the OH group. And really that's virtually the only difference between progesterone and testosterone. Is testosterone again has the OH group on the end, and progesterone only has the ketone group. So you're going to need to know the structural differences between estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone, where they're produced at in the body and so forth. Now the other thing I should mention that's important is for the HL. Okay, so HL on page 514 is a table of important summarized table of important hormones in the body, their functions and their target cells. You should look over that table and come somewhat familiar with that table of some of these different hormones and their target cells and their functions in the body. For SL, it's found on page 284. So make sure you take a look at those later on. Okay, so our last little bit of this tutorial is we're going to look at some applications of some of these hormones. The first one we're going to look at is oral contraceptives. One of the biggest contraceptives that is used is the pill, and the pill is basically composed of progesterone and estrogen, and the purpose of the pill is to suppress the secretion of two other hormones called FSH and LH. Okay, now what happens is that the female body secretes FSH and LH, and these two hormones are going to cause female ovulation. Okay, so both FSH and LH, which are hormones, they're going to trigger ovulation in females. And so the idea is that if we take the pill is going to suppress these two hormones and prevent females from ovulating. Normally the pill, of course, is a prescription drug and has to be assigned by a doctor. But normally a female will take the pill for 3 weeks. Which contains the different dosage or different amounts of concentrations of progesterone and estrogen. And then the 4th week, so the last week of the month, they use a placebo. They use a placebo that does not contain progesterone or estrogen, but just allows the female to keep up with the habit of taking the pill. There's also called the morning after pill, and that is going to contain very high concentrations of both progesterone and estrogen, but those are only to be used for emergencies only. And so you can get in your book and you can read more about oral contraceptives, specifically the pill, which you need to really know for the IB exam. This may sound a little strange, but yeah, you need to know all about this for the test. Alright, the last thing we're going to look at with this tutorial is steroids and the abuses of steroids and how we use those, okay? Now, some people are prescribed with steroids that are used for hormone replacement therapy or HRT. The purpose of hormones or specific steroids are for tissue growth. And some people have to be able to, they're not able to grow their tissues like they're supposed to, so they need to go through hormone replacement therapy. Others illegally use steroids, and these are referred to as anabolic steroids. The most important of these is going to be testosterone. Testosterone, one of the most important growth hormones, and this is used by certain athletes to enhance muscle growth. However, in most sports, in fact, I think pretty much all sports at this point, using testosterone or anabolic steroids for tissue growth is outlawed and against regulations. Besides, it can have using anabolic steroids can have serious consequences that are not very good. For instance, hormones themselves are typically toxic, or anabolic steroids are toxic to the liver, and this can result in liver cancer. Or cancer of the liver. Other things is it causes mood swings. It changes imbalances of other hormones. It causes changes in hair distribution. It can cause different or lack of sexual desires. It can cause fertility problems. Just a whole horde of different problems that anabolic steroids can cause, and so they can be dangerous. People have died from over usage of these anabolic steroids, and besides, it's cheating and use of these anabolic steroids in sports and other things. Okay, so the bottom line is I would get into your textbook, look at the anabolic steroids, the uses of them, the effects of these on the human body, why they can be so dangerous, as well as go in and look at the oral contraceptives a little bit, read through those pages and learn them well for the test. But other than that, this is the end of this tutorial. And this is the last one again that the SL have to look at.